This show is produced by the Hartman Media Company. For more information and links to all our great podcasts, visit hartmanmedia.com.
Hey, good morning, Jason Hartman and team. Thank you for all the great content, all the great guest speakers you have on. And Gina and I feel fantastic about doing what we're doing. And we'll just keep on listening and take care, and wish we could see you all soon, and hope that'll be happening. Take care.
Welcome to the Creating Wealth Show with Jason Hartman. You're about to learn a new slant on investing, some exciting techniques, and fresh new approaches to the world's most historically proven asset class that will enable you to create more wealth and freedom than you ever thought possible. Jason is a genuine self-made multimillionaire who's actually been there and done it. He's a successful investor, lender, developer, and entrepreneur who's owned properties in 11 states, had hundreds of tenants, and been involved in thousands of real estate transactions. This program will help you follow in Jason's footsteps on the road to your financial independence day. You really can do it. And now, here's your host, Jason Hartman, with the complete solution for real estate investors.
Welcome to episode 2053. Today we've got a great show for you. We've got Ken McElroy, Rich Dad author and author of several books, with us today. He is my business partner in the collective Mastermind, as you know. And by the way, our next event is coming up in the Bahamas. That is in November in the Bahamas. So if you're interested in the collective, reach out through our website, jasonhartman.com, and we'll be happy to help you and talk to you about that a little bit. But Ken will be here in just a few minutes. First, though, I want to cover a couple of important things. Number one, I want to remind you not to be fooled by the clickbait, by the fake news. It is absolutely shocking to me, folks, how I go surf around YouTube, I read stuff, I watch videos, I listen to podcasts, and so many people are just getting it wrong. They're just misinterpreting things, probably on purpose, which I think this whole clickbait culture shows a real lack of integrity. But you know, there's an old saying, if you can't beat them, join them. Maybe I should join them, because all of these guys have a lot bigger following than I do because they spread the fear porn. You know, it's just so amazing how the human mind works and how the psychology works, that we are just attracted to this stuff. It's absolutely crazy, you know? And while people are distracted, you know, I guess it's like in the Roman days, right? They distracted the population with bread and circuses. And I guess this is the new bread and circuses. It's the fear porn, it's the clickbait, it's the fake news, it's the bad news. And that is what attracts people. But the reality is much different. And so for those of us just doing our thing, you know, we're here in the background doing our thing. We're investing in properties. We're managing our properties well. That's really one of the most important things. Just managing our properties well as we go through time and being good stewards of our wealth. We're making money. So here's some statistics for you. This is the latest and greatest. And this is weekly inventory change, right? We saw inventory rise ever so slightly by, you know, a few hundred homes for sale, up now to 509,000 homes for sale in a country of, what are we at now? 338 million people, about 140 million housing units. Wow. It's just absolutely shocking. Far less than 1% of the housing stock is for sale. This is one of the lowest inventory points. If you just take out the point during the pandemic when inventory went down really low to about 240,000 units, where we had what I like when people say the savagely unhealthy housing market. And we still have a savagely unhealthy housing market. Rents are too high, and they're going higher, folks. Rents are too high. Housing is too expensive in America. But this problem is not going to be fixed anytime soon. Yes, the builders have now started to pay a little bit more attention to making affordable properties, but they can't make them. I mean, it's like you can't do it, right? Because the cost of construction is simply too high. So they're shrinking the lots even more, as if, the lots weren't already being shrunken over the past several decades, but they're shrinking the lots even more, and they're trying to satisfy this affordable housing market. By the way, I was watching a video this morning, and they were talking about Ivy Zellman, and, her statistics are just really not good, in my opinion. Her research is not good. I invited her on the show. She canceled the interview. I think she's scared to come on and have a discussion. So Ivy, if you're watching, if you're listening, come on the show. Talk to me. She made up some fake excuse about how her compliance department didn't want her to be on the show, as if we were offering securities or something like that. It's just, folks, when something cannot withstand the scrutiny of debate, it's fake news. These people are just lacking in integrity because they can't have a discussion. They can't have a dialogue. It's like the monologue media versus the dialogue media, which I've told you about, that article I wrote about 23 years ago that I think really summed it up. The monologue media versus the dialogue media. So when you can't withstand the scrutiny of debate, you got a problem. We really have to question your integrity, and we have to question the competence of your research and your data. It's just amazing, right? But if Ivy Zellman wants to come on, hey, I won't bite. Just come on the show. Let's discuss the housing market. And you can tell me if I'm wrong. I mean, look, I can take it. I've been doing this a very, very long time. So it's no big deal. A lot of people have told me I'm wrong before, although they've been wrong, but they'll be right eventually. A broken clock is right twice a day. Okay, so inventory peak this year was 509,000. We are at that peak right now, folks. We are at that inventory peak. But like our friends at Altos say, for context, right? Back up from the painting. You're in the museum. Don't be looking at the painting. Don't be looking at the Mona Lisa if you're in the Louvre from 6 inches away. Get back about 4 feet so you can see the whole thing, right? Don't just look at the brush strokes. Back up. And the context, 2015 inventory was 1.2 million. So like I've been saying, we're still 700,000 homes short. And I want to just remind you, this is the normal market, 1.2 million homes for sale. And again, this is the Altos data, not the NAR data. They calculate it differently. Use either one as long as you compare apples to apples, right? Either one is fine with me. Just keep the comparison consistent, because otherwise you would be purveying fake news and clickbait, and you don't want to do that, right? You want to keep the comparison consistent. But this is just a normal market. Look, folks, I was here in 2015. I was here in 2006. I was here in 2004 in the investment-only business, and before that, I was in the traditional real estate business before Coldwell Banker bought my company. So 2015 was not a bad market. I mean, that was a very healthy market, right? We had a decent amount of inventory. Our investors were buying property. They were making money. Things were going great. This was not a buyer's market. It was not a recessionary market. It was not a bad market. It was just a normal market. So we need 700,000 homes to get to normal, to just get to normal, right? Okay. All right. So here's another thing about negative equity that I think is important. Only 2% of the homeowners with a mortgage were in a negative equity position. Right? Roughly the same rate recorded over the past 2 years. The number of underwater houses in the US peaked at nearly 26% in 2009. So for all of you thinking, oh, this is the Great Recession, this is the GFC, the global financial crisis, right? You're not even close, right? 26% of the homes had negative equity back then compared to 2% now. This is a nothing burger at this point. Another, when I was watching this video, right, and they were talking about Zellman, and this other analyst was on, and the guy from Wealthion was on, and he was intentionally, maybe intentionally, or maybe he just doesn't get it, right? He was misinterpreting the data. That's Adam Taggart. Love to have him on the show. We've invited him. And he's been on before, by the way, when he was with Chris Martenson, when they were partners. I think they were partners. And he was on the show. Really quite a good show from years ago. But, just go through the last 6,000 interviews I've done, and you can hear all these people, right? Most of them, except the ones that are afraid to come on the show. Hey, Ivy Zellman, you going to come on? Let's see if she'll do it. So he was talking about the Airbnb data, misinterpreting it again. Oh, there's all these Airbnb homes that are going to hit the market. Fake news, okay? And the reason is, number one, the wide disparity of price ranges. right? We're only in the affordable housing market. We like the entry-level houses. That's all we're talking about on this show, folks. So all of this supply, right? All of these supply discussions pertain to the broad supply of all price ranges, all geographies, all product types, right? So that's the first thing. But the misinterpretation and the leap in logic, like Nick Girelli does this all the time, invited him on the show. He accepted a couple of times, well, like Ivy Zellman did. And then somehow the show never happens. He says he'll come on, like 2 or 3 times he accepted, and then he doesn't come on. I mean, his data is really interesting. I'd love to interview the guy. But the leap in logic, I mean, he makes many leaps in logic, in my opinion, but one of them is about the Airbnb market. And he got a lot of great publicity on this article. The assumption that they'll all come on the market at the same time rather than drip out, right? And Airbnb, is a bust. I completely agree with that. And these properties do hit the market. Some of them turn into traditional rentals. Some of them turn into houses for the owners. Like a lot of Airbnb people were just renters who would get Airbnb properties and rent them to other people. Well, some of those people are actually moving into their own properties, right? Okay. And then some of them are selling those properties. But remember, all price ranges, all geographies, and they don't all come on the market at once. People make these decisions slowly and they trickle onto the market. It's not like, 200,000 new Airbnb properties hit the market for sale in a week. It just doesn't happen that way, folks. It's a really shallow analysis that most people do, right? Most of these people, and including the experts, right? The people who have research firms, the experts, they do this shallow analysis and they promote sound bites, clickbait, and fear porn. They just fearmonger and they get lots of publicity for it. And it's really a sad world we live in, that these people with, lacking integrity, whether it's integrity in terms of their character or just integrity of their research, which is not good, right? One or the other or both, right? So that's the way it works. Okay. U.S. homeowners with a mortgage saw year-over-year equity losses. Equity losses. Oh, make a headline about that. People are losing equity. Oh my God. Of $8,300. Oh, that's the end of the world. $8,300 in the second quarter of 2023. But quarterly gains were almost $13,900. So the clickbait headline is people are losing equity. But what they don't tell you is they actually are up $13,900 just in the quarter. And the average U.S. homeowner now has about $290,000 in equity. Will they tell you that? Doesn't make for a good thumbnail on your YouTube video, does it? I am so frustrated by this. All right, let's move on. So if you're not in our Empowered Investor Pro group, join us. You got to be in this group. It is the best investment you're going to make besides buying actual properties. And you can join us monthly on Zoom. We'd love to have you. I'll be there and we can talk about all of this stuff in a dialogue format. See, right now, this is just the monologue format. Although if you're watching on YouTube, of course, you can comment below or any of the other video platforms. And if not, go to jasonhartman.com/ask. We love to get your comments. Comments, criticisms, questions, put them all in there, jasonhartman.com/ask. But join us on Zoom every month. Also, you get to join our social network where people get their questions answered. We provide research and data, a lot of the stuff that you don't hear on the show. So Empowered Investor Pro, we'd love to have you as part of that community and meet with you every single month on Zoom. And I just want to show you this map one more time, because this, of course, is the Federal Housing Finance Agency, FHFA, right? And it shows you what happened in the last year. Yes, some prices were slightly down in the cyclical markets in the West, markets we never touch. I mean, we never touch these markets, right? We have no interest in them whatsoever. Ever so slightly, 0.06% down. If you go in just a little bit, you look at Arizona and Nevada, right? Those markets are pretty challenged right now in some of them. But then the rest of the country, you go Texas and you go east and look at the appreciation rates. They're phenomenal. But so what? You should be investing for yield anyway. Appreciation is not the game. That's just the frosting on the cake. All right, let's get to Ken McElroy. Here we go. It is my pleasure to welcome my good buddy Ken McElroy back to the show. As you know, he's also my business partner in the collective Mastermind, where we do some exciting, super high-end things, high-end networking and fun stuff, fun trips. But it's great to have him back. You know him because, of course, he's the author of several books in the Rich Dad series, some outside of that as well. And he's got great insights into the multifamily market, the syndication world, running investment funds, and just all sorts of insights on the economy. Kenny, welcome. How are you doing?
Good, man. How are you? Good seeing you again.
Good. Likewise. It's good to have you back on the show, and it's been too long.
I know. Well, the good news is there's a lot that's happened, so there's a lot to discuss.
There definitely is. There definitely is. So maybe that's a good place to start. What's going on in your world? There does seem like there's some turmoil as an outsider, but you're on the inside. You're doing it every day. So give us the update.
Sure. Well, I think it's important to understand, we're sitting right now at about $2 billion in assets, mostly multifamily. We just sold an office building and we've sold off a storage project. And, obviously we've been in business for almost 25 years with this current company and we're actively trying to buy, Jason, and we're actively trying to build. So I have 300 employees. We have analysts, we have acquisition people. We have boots on the ground and heartbeat of the market. And I think that's important to know because every single week I'm reviewing deals. Every single week. And my acquisition guys are flying around, meet with brokers, meet with mortgage people. So I do understand what's going on week to week, and I've watched it change. And the biggest, of course, story by a long shot is the Federal Reserve and the 11 increases in the federal funds rate. Yep. So that basically what it did is anybody that owned property 2 years ago on the commercial side specifically, they saw values go down 20 to 30%, in some cases even more. And the reason is because it's the same property with the same tenants, maybe even the same rent and the same expenses, but the cost of debt, the cost to buy it went up, the mortgage payment went up a lot. Yep. So the cash flow goes down, all things being equal, and therefore a buyer like ourselves, we're going to pay less because we're always solving the cash flow. So our cash flow as a buyer is significantly impacted with 11 rate increases. And so the sellers were like, wait a second, our properties are worth, this much. And we're like, sorry, they were not anymore. So I would say the first year to year and a half, while all that was going on, the sellers were in denial. Yeah. And the ones that could just pulled their units off the market, let's say, and they said, we're just going to wait it out and see. Well, the Fed just kept raising. This is like after one, after two, after three, after four.
You'd think they would stop.
Yeah. So now when does the rubber hit the road? Really two ways. Mm-hmm. The first way is if there's a loan maturity. That's the first thing. So in other words, the seller now does not have any options. Right. If their loan's maturing, they have to make a decision. And so the sharks are in the water, obviously, right? So that's the first thing. Or the second one is the financial partner, let's say the equity, wants their money back. And, they had a predetermined term on the equity. And they're also saying, hey, it's time. We need to put this thing up on the market. And a lot of these syndicators are on the back end of that. They're on the back end of the waterfall. So that's basically what's happening. It's not good because the values are significantly down in every real estate class, commercial real estate class, because of the interest rates.
Okay, so that's what I was going to ask you, actually. So when you speak of that, of course, the cost of debt has gone up across the board. That applies to every asset class. But people talk about, they say things, and this drives me nuts. I'm sure drives you nuts too. They say commercial real estate, and I don't know what the heck that means. Yeah. Does it mean apartments? Does it mean self-storage? Does it mean industrial? Does it mean retail or office or what? Or, hotels or a zillion other things too. When you say that, are you just talking kind of across the board? Or I'm sure it's pretty uneven, like office is really beat up. Retail's pretty beat up. Yeah. But
it's a really good point. Very good point. But here's the thing. If you back away from the categories, the interest rates don't care, right? So if you're trying to buy a retail center or you're trying to buy an office building or trying to buy a multifamily or trying to buy a mall, your cost of debt is higher. So that's why I use that term. Yeah. But to your point, very good point. Office buildings are in the biggest trouble right now because of the work from home. You think about bricks and mortar retail, that's been under attack for a while because
Amazon
of
effect,
Amazon, everybody wants their stuff, and who goes to the mall anymore? So malls are starting to be redeveloped. That train left the station, several years ago. Office buildings are kind of the new topic, but we're also seeing small retailers are also in trouble. But the multifamily space has been under attack mostly because of the debt issues, not because of a vacancy issue.
Right.
So I think that's important to know.
Okay, so correct a possible misconception. I see all kinds of articles about how there's so many multifamily units under construction, so many apartments have hit the market in the past year or so, and the stuff I'm reading is that it's oversupplied. Is that not true, Kenny? Or
let's go back real quick. You and I talk a lot about this. Yep. It's important to understand that residential pulls people away from multifamily.
Right. Single family or
single family.
Yeah.
Right. So when single family is unaffordable, people rent
apartments. Yeah.
That's a really important factor because the residential mortgages have gone up, the prices, and the home prices have not really come down a lot. So it's interesting for me to watch this. And are there pockets of multifamily that's been overbuilt? Absolutely, but not very many. Mm-hmm. So what's happened is we went through this period of time where we had 5, 6, 7, 8, even 10% per year rent growth, which is really not healthy.
Yep.
And all it's done is decelerate.
Right.
That's it. So I tell everybody, I go, so what? Like we're at 2-3% rent growth. That's what my whole career has been built on.
Sure. Yeah, that's fine.
And the biggest barometer for that exact question are concessions. That's it. So period. So don't pay attention to any articles. Just look, is this apartment building offering 100 off, half a month off, 1 month off? If they are, then and the market's doing that, then that they're suffering from vacancy. And you are not seeing concessions yet.
Okay.
In very, very small places because of new construction only. And so you imagine, so as an example, we just finished a 330 unit building. And when you open the doors, you have 330 vacancies.
Right. Yeah. Okay. Scary.
So on month 1, I have 330. On month 2, I have 300. On month 3, I have 270, let's say. So when you see that, you might see somebody doing some crazy stuff just to speed up the absorption.
Fill it up. Sure.
But who cares? Because I got 300 vacants, Yeah. So that I don't think is a good barometer because all you're trying to do is just get that thing full and then stabilize it later. But when you start to see it systemically in the marketplace, then Jason, we've got vacancy problems. First, there's dropping rents. But even before that, of course, is concessions, right? So you go concessions and then you drop rents, but there's no rents being dropped.
Right.
The first thing you see are concessions.
And, Ken, I can see a way with you talking about that. I can see a way that just the market dynamics of having a lot of new units hit the market, it would distort the statistics.
Yeah.
Because like you said, when you're trying to fill up a brand new building where you got 330 vacant units, right? You're going to make deals to fill that up. And then you're going to try and get your coupon rate up in later years, which you're going to be able to do. So that would really distort the statistics in a market where there's a lot of new construction, right? Whereas if you didn't have much new construction, you wouldn't see all those units coming on the market at the same time, and there wouldn't be the compromises, the concessions, et cetera, right?
That's exactly right. And the other thing is, Jason, as you know, a lot of times, it's very rare that you see a concentrated number of multifamily in 1 or 2 or 3 square miles. What you find, because as you know, building these things take a while, and oftentimes they're in established areas, and sometimes they're, on a corner of something that's been there a while. It's not like residential housing where you're building subdivision after subdivision after subdivision. So you find these random sites that are being built and zoned and rezoned and all that kind of stuff. And so you might have one pop up here and one pop up here and one pop up here. Right. In some cases, you definitely see like a new semiconductor plant being built in North Phoenix right now.
Right. Yeah.
Okay, so now there's a massive scramble for multifamily and residential, all that stuff, for all the jobs that are going to be out there.
All in the same area.
That's very unique, right? Because now you'll see apartments being built up at the same time. But that is, that's the exception. It's not necessarily the norm. But there's definitely what's really facing multifamily, and what's going to happen is all the stuff that was started 2 years ago, 1.5 years ago, 1 year ago, will all be finished. It'll all be leased up. The bigger issue is there's going to be nothing after that, because there's a tremendous amount of builders that said the interest rates are too high,
we're not going to build.
Construction costs are too high, and they just put these deals on the shelf until things settle down. Because
same thing going on with the single family home builders, as you know.
Yeah,
right. Yeah.
So you got to be careful in looking at these little micro areas.
Right.
The bigger picture is we've had a tremendous amount of single family people come over because they can't afford to buy a home.
Yep.
And that's the natural progression. People rent and then they buy.
Yeah.
So then there's nothing wrong with that. It's been that way forever, and it will be that way forever. So we have that, but you also have this lag of new construction. There's not going to be hardly any after the end of next year.
Yeah, I agree. And that's the same thing with the new home, single family market is the same thing. The builders were kind of gung ho for a while, but now the builder confidence has kind of flipped, because a lot of people don't really think about it. They don't think, hey, look, the builder's got to finance their project to build it. Right. And that's a huge cost, and it's a huge risk, because you've got to plan years in advance, right? You've got to get entitlements and all this kind of stuff, and you got to go through the construction process, and you don't know what the market's going to be like at the time you come to market. And if your cost of capital has, tripled, and investors are reining in their horns a little bit, and people are getting a little worried, the construction kind of dries up. We saw that certainly in the single family market coming out of the Great Recession. We saw a 10-year no building, basically.
Yeah, that's what we're heading into. It's funny. I read these articles, and we also have a pulse on a lot of the markets. We look at about 60 multifamily markets. There's certainly more than that, of course, but those are the ones that we would invest in. There's no question that things have slowed down a little bit, but you know what it's been? Yeah. It's been affordability.
Yeah.
Rents have gone up so much that people they're not moving out of houses, and they're also staying put and getting roommates, and they're doubling up.
Yep.
People are getting
squeezed.
Impacted. Yeah, they're getting squeezed.
No question.
And the landlords, are in a really good position, to your point, probably for the next 10 years. Something has to change, because we have 6 projects and we're not that big. We're building 2. We opened one, the one I just mentioned. We have another one. And then we put 4 on the shelf.
There's a lot of wisdom here in what Kenny is saying, folks. And it reminds me of that famous quote by Wayne Gretzky: you got to skate to where the puck is going. And even if you're reading the articles today about this, that, and the other thing, right? The puck is going to 2 years of no supply.
Correct.
No new supply being created. And that's a giant problem. So some will say, Ken, hey, they're going to solve this problem because they're going to convert shopping malls to residential. They're going to convert offices to residential. They're even going to convert big box retail to residential. And, I've done some shows on this. Way more about construction than I ever want to know. But to me, and in interviewing some experts, it seems like these conversions are insanely expensive and difficult. It's just most of the time easier to just build a new apartment complex, isn't it?
It's way easier. Yeah. First of all, who wants to live in an office building? That's important.
Right.
2, who wants to live in a converted office building?
Or a converted shopping mall.
Yeah, right. It just, trust me,
doesn't work. Yeah.
We've bought shopping centers. We rip them down and we build what we build. After doing it this long, you kind of know what residents want. Yeah. You know the things that sell, the things that people want when they move in. You're talking about a major retrofit, lots of money. And I actually had an office guy on my show, and he said that they estimate that less than 5% of the office buildings can even be converted.
Yeah, there's some interesting YouTube channels that talk about that, and I've watched the videos. And when you really analyze it and understand the massive complexity of converting them. I mean, think about the plumbing, the way the elevators are designed and arranged. It depends where the staircases are and the fire codes. And, most office buildings are designed to be environmentally enclosed, right, for energy efficiency. But residents don't want that. They want windows that open, right? You feel trapped if you're in a house that the windows won't open. You don't want to live in this like air-conditioned environment when you're in residential. And so it just does not work. But
not to mention the fact that just the ability to run to the store or take your pet out and all those things are just common area. Like, where do you congregate? Like, you know what I mean? Like,
in the space where the cafeteria was downstairs in the office.
Yeah, I guess
that's about it.
It's just and then what about all the amenities? Like we have to put in pools and dog parks, fitness centers. Now you can do all of that stuff, but you really have to do it forward thinking. So I just don't see it as any kind of a player.
Yeah, it just really doesn't work. I agree with you. During the pandemic, some of my friends were converting hotel buildings to residential.
Yep.
That works a little better, right?
I tried to buy some. Yeah, I tried to buy one in Austin right next to the Domain. That was, a lot of the micro hotels did not do well. So again, different kind of market. The units were 300 square feet, I think, 350 square feet. Mm-hmm. Now, think about what a hotel has. Like, it does not have a full kitchen,
right?
But typically, it's usually one room. So there's a certain market for it. And what we were trying to do was that traveler that's, comes in for 1 month, 2 months, 3 months, and doesn't want, the big expensive an apartment. And so those
like an extended stay concept.
Yeah. There's a niche for those for sure, but it's not going to, like you and Coco, like you're not going to, that's not going to be a spot.
Live in a hotel. Exactly.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, that's true. But Kenny, this all leads to the question that is plaguing the country and really the whole world, which is, how are we ever going to solve, if we can even, maybe it can't be solved, the affordable housing problem? Is it solvable at all?
It's a private-public partnership. That's the way it has to be, in my opinion. So the only way I've ever seen it work. So what will happen is the politicians will they'll knee-jerk reaction to homelessness and safety issues and stuff like that. And they'll try to impose rent control and all that stuff. And all that does is direct money somewhere else. Yeah. So what really has to happen, and then, that just creates less supply in that area. And of course, prices go up. And we've seen that in New York. We've seen that in California. We're starting to see that in Portland. Okay. So just take a look at where rent control's been implemented.
It's a disaster every time.
Every single time. So that's, unfortunately, for the uneducated, that's what they do first. But really what needs to happen, and there are some cities actually doing this, is they need to go to people like us and they need to say, listen, if you restrict the rents on, say, 20% of your project to make them affordable, and so we would take 80%, let's say, would be non-rent controlled and 20 would be rent controlled. Yep. Then we'll do some things for you, maybe on the property taxes or financing or whatever it might be. That is going to be how it's going to have to roll out, because the cities need this. Yep. The developers want to do it. But what's happening, if you look at, I'll just pick on Portland because it's so easy to do. Like, no, they did.
Portland is a disaster.
They did a statewide rent control, right? So they said, okay, investors, if you invest here, we're going to cap your revenue on what we think it should be. But we're also going to increase your utilities. We're going to increase your property taxes, and we're going to increase your insurance and all those kinds of things in order to do business here. So all of a sudden, an investor, a professional investor, is going to say, okay, Oregon,
no thanks.
I'm going to cross that off my list. I'm going to, go next door, and to Idaho or Montana or whatever. And that's actually what's happened. And so what it does is, if anybody moves to Oregon, now there's less supply. Nothing's been built there for a while. And now as the population grows, the housing prices go up, the rents go up. So that is...
And it's a vicious cycle. You could continue that, because then what happens is employers don't expand or locate there. Correct. Because their employees they'd have to pay them so much to afford housing.
Right.
So that's a vicious cycle. And it just turns into this complete disaster. You want to ruin a city? That's how you do it. And we'll be back with a lot more on this topic with this guest on our next episode. Thank you so much for listening. Please be sure to subscribe so that you don't miss any episodes. Be sure to check out the show's specific website and our general website, hartmanmedia.com, for appropriate disclaimers and terms of service. Remember that guest opinions are their own, and if you require specific legal or tax advice or advice in any other specialized area, please consult an appropriate professional. And we also very much appreciate you reviewing the show. Please go to iTunes or Stitcher Radio or whatever platform you're using and write a review for the show. We would very much appreciate that. And be sure to make it official and subscribe so you do not miss any episodes. We look forward to seeing you on the next episode.